Hello and welcome to a muted show that was just muted, but I unmuted it. So, hello everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. My name's Leecamp, the most censored comedian in America, and your resident anti-Zionist Jew. So, thanks for being here. The genocide continues, so that's on the bad news front. I'm going to put that in the bad news column. The Israel, the apartheid state, continues to commit genocide in Gaza. It's undeniable. They've violated something like 60 different international laws and UN regulations and everything else as they continue to do this. Your mainstream media continues to either ignore it or try to give you some sort of IDF propaganda show, which I'm going to get into that in a minute, the hilarious IDF propaganda that CNN and others have been pushing out today. I'm also going to bring you, this is actually pretty big. I know it may seem minor, but there is a minor mutiny going on within the U.S. government in a way that has not really happened before in my lifetime. You have large numbers of people within the U.S. government who are either resigning, threatening to resign, saying they won't continue to do their jobs as the U.S. backs, funds, arms, and just celebrates the genocide that Israel is perpetrating right now. So I'm going to bring you that story, which even the New York Times is talking about, and it has gotten so big, this minor mutiny inside the U.S. government, that Blinken was forced to address it, which of course is hilarious. It sounds like an HR meeting, you know, where they're telling them about we're going to have a tolerance training or something. It is unbelievable. So I'm going to bring you that story. I'm going to bring you, like I said, story of some of the propaganda that CNN and others have been running with concerning the IDF, the Israeli military. And I'll be bringing you plenty of updates. And then later in the show, I know I spent a while on it yesterday. This one's going to be shorter, but I actually have more breaking news on the assassination of JFK. I know. How could there be breaking news on the assassination of a president 60 years ago? Well, I guess because it was 60 years ago, more people are coming forward. There's more talk of it. There are more documentaries on it. Maybe that's why the information's coming out now. But this is in Rolling Stone and a new documentary revealing interviews with the doctors that were on site when JFK was shot, and it destroys the government cover-up in a really unprecedented way. So I'm going to bring you that a little later. But again, I'm not going to spend half the show on it. It's just going to be, 5-10 minutes later. But everybody hit a thumbs up, hit subscribe and follow and share this, and let's get into it. I want to begin with some protesters because that always gives us a good, warm feeling, right? Always perks us up for facing the genocidal news we now have to face on a daily basis, to see protesters interrupting business as usual, interrupting the people who continue to help fund, arm, and perpetrate this genocide, this crime against humanity, this long list of atrocities, which, by the way, has now killed over 11,000 people, 5,000 children. It's just an unbelievable level of destruction and harm and soulless. I don't crime against humanity. I don't know how else to put it. It's just awful, and it is waking a lot of people up. So that's a very slight plus side. People are seeing that the apartheid state is oppressive. They're learning about it for the first time. Many people are. And the amount of propaganda that is being required right now to try and justify and make this seem in some way at all justifiable, at all. And this is both parties, by the way. It's Democrat and Republican in the United States. This is all of our corporate sold out sacks of garbage. They're all signing up for this, all high-fiving for this, and it shows how either they're soulless or they're spineless. Some of them are spineless, most of them are soulless. But anyway, let's start with some protesters. This is during Scotiabank's Giller Prize ceremony. So this is a big black tie event, right? You can see they have put Lord knows how much money into this event. This is very rich people sitting at Scotiabank's prize ceremony. celebrating probably their best salespeople or their CEO lifetime achievements and garbage like that. But Scotia Bank is funding the genocide of the Palestinian people. It's coming from Palestinian Youth Movement through its $500 million stake in Elbit Systems. I've talked to you about Elbit Systems before. They are one of the largest weapons contractors connected to the Israeli apartheid regime. I believe they're centered in Britain and the UK. Anyway, I'll let you watch as so the two people with signs have already gotten on the stage where the video begins, and you can see but gently try and rip down one of the signs that says "Stop funding genocide" or something like that. And anyway, it's hilarious and pathetic, and these people, these incredibly rich, incredibly douchebaggy people, are so wildly pathetic. So he tries to rip the signs away.
Currently has a $500 million stake in Gov't Systems. Gov't Systems is supplying the Israeli military's genocide against the Palestinian people. We cannot be silent anymore. We call for
They start playing music. They start playing music too as they continue to kick out the protesters. You heard some people booing, but some people, that's the thing is when you get incredibly rich people in a room like this, some of them understand it's a genocide that continues to be perpetrated. Some of them don't get it. Some of them are more than willing to justify a genocide. But some of them were actively booing, you know, how dare you interrupt our foie gras and our champagne as we cheers ourselves for funding a genocide. Anyway, great job to those protesters. I consider them my spirit animals. You guys rock. And by the way, this type of stuff has been going on all over the place, not just across the United States, Canada, the UK. There are people interrupting events. These rich mother frackers, mother fudge nutters should not be allowed to have their events in a nice, calm, and peaceful manner and just sit there quietly and enjoy the fact that they are funding the murder of children on a daily basis. On some days, Israel has killed over 400 children. The average is like 140 children murdered a day by Israel. That's the average since October 7th. So they should not be allowed to have their events. Don't let them have their events. Like, interrupt them. Do what you need to do. And it's amazing to see them confronted with this stuff because they don't know how to deal with it. I want to bring you some of the other information before I get to the story about the mutiny, which is pretty unheard of in U.S. government. This is coming from The Intercept. This is a great article. I mean, it's tough to read, but it is by someone who was actually in the Gaza's Trail of Tears. Many of you know that tens of thousands, because they allowed that humanitarian corridor, which means Israel allowed a certain number of hours in a certain area for everyone to participate in the forced migration, which they have really no choice in because otherwise it'd sit there and be massacred. And so it really, many are comparing it to the Trail of Tears. It's horrific and it's a horror show. And those are the ones that have survived. Those are the ones still living. Most of the hospitals, almost all the hospitals, are no longer functioning in Gaza. And anyway, this article is about a woman, a journalist, Hind Qadari, who was in this Trail of Tears. And she talks about the debate amongst journalists, amongst she and her fellow journalists, of whether to stay in northern Gaza in order to cover the information. But while they're having this debate, they're basically living in their offices. Their houses have been destroyed. They have friends and family who've been killed. The food and water's been shut off. They don't have electricity. They never know when a bomb is going to come through the window because they are journalists and they are being targeted in yet another war crime by Israel. So they know they are being targeted. Something like 50 journalists have already been murdered by Israel. That's not counting the over 100 UN workers that have also been targeted and murdered by Israel. That's, of course, also not counting the medics and hospitals that have been targeted by Israel. So as journalists, the discussion there is, do we stay and try and continue to bring these facts to the world, continue to bring this information to the world about this genocide? Do we stay here risking our lives, risking our families' lives, risking our kids' lives? Or do we give up and run? And, I don't begrudge them the decision to leave. I mean, if you and your family were there and you were targeted as a journalist, would you be able to say, no, I'm going to sit here and wait to see how long until I'm killed? It's just a horrific scenario to be in. And she details the trail of tears as they march towards southern Gaza. The goal of Israel, as I've brought to you before, thank you so much, Linda, for the donation. The goal of Israel, which I brought to you before, some of this is public documentation, much of it is leaked documentation, is to so obliterate northern Gaza that that they're all forced to flee south, and then to move. Israel will continue to move them south in order to try to force them into Egypt. So far, Egypt has refused to take millions of refugees. Israel wants to put them in tent cities in the Sinai desert in Egypt. And Israel's goal is to a combination of threaten Egypt and offer massive financial, elimination of debt in order to incentivize Egypt to allow this forced migration to happen. Some Israeli officials I brought you just yesterday have publicly called this the second Nakba. Nakba is the term used for the catastrophe, as Palestinians viewed it, in 1948, when they were also forcibly moved, kicked off their land, kicked out of their houses, never allowed to return, put into open-air prisons, and ethnically cleansed. There was a genocide. There were hundreds of thousands killed. And they lost their homes and their areas and their cultures, and they were separated, families separated. And so some Israeli officials have publicly called this the second Nakba. Basically, we did the ethnic cleansing in 1948. We are now continuing that job. And it's good to see Jeremy Scahill writing again. It's been a long time since I think he's written much, but he's writing for The Intercept that Biden's legacy should forever be haunted by the names of Gaza's dead children. And I think this brings up a great point, which is we are seeing, even in, I think, many liberals' minds, the complete destruction of whatever legacy a Joe Biden or so many others. If I have time, I might show you a clip of General Wesley Clark, but and how he's, dragging his legacy through the mud. Now, for those of you who are educated, if you were educated over the past couple decades about who Joe Biden actually is, then he shouldn't have had any legacy to stand on anyway. You shouldn't have been like, yeah, Joe Biden's a good guy. But there's a lot of liberals that don't understand, and they thought Joe Biden was somehow a good person trying to achieve some positive in a shitty situation. But that's not, even though you and I, most of you know that's not the case, there are those that exist. And I think that for them, this is a turning point, many of them. Now, obviously, some are deluded and some people will die wrong. Some people will never figure it out. It'll just never click. But I think this is a turning point for many of them who are, well, I supported Joe Biden all the way, but this is really horrific. Why is he not calling for a ceasefire? By the way, when he was asked about a ceasefire, he said whether there's any chance of one, he said, nope, none. Meaning keep bombing hospitals, keep bombing schools, keep bombing children, keep murdering Palestinians. Anyway, there's a lot of these people. Another one, which I just mentioned, is General Wesley Clark. Okay, he's a general, former head of NATO. This is not a guy with a positive history if you understand how U.S. empire works. However, a lot of people had largely come to know him as the guy who revealed the plot after 9/11, right? He has spoken publicly about this many times, that immediately in the weeks after 9/11, he went into the Pentagon and they said, we have a plan to go into 5 countries in 7 years. And it shocked him. Oh, sorry, 7 countries in 5 years. And it stunned him because most of those countries had nothing to do with 9/11. And he has spoken about this many times, and many people will reference this. And most of those countries have been destroyed by the U.S. or U.S. allies. We're talking Libya, Iraq, attempting Iran, Syria, and Afghanistan. And I think Yemen was also on the list. But so those revelations, many people view that as kind of his legacy. Oh, he's the guy that was willing to tell us about the project, about the goal, about the mission to invade all these countries that had nothing to do with 9/11. And yet now he is speaking out, and his legacy is becoming a genocide propagandist, a pro-genocide propagandist. So I think you're seeing the complete reversal of the legacy of a lot of these people. Now, again, I get you and I knew that a general and former head of NATO Allied Command was not going to be on your good guy list. But anyway, I think we are seeing a major shift. Since I already mentioned it, before I get to the massive mutiny, I view it as massive because it's kind of unprecedented in the U.S. government. Since I already mentioned it, Joe Biden defending the bombing of hospitals. It actually is something that the White House had to walk back. And this is possibly one of the most repulsive, disgusting headline stories you will ever read, because this is the president accidentally, because he's 99 years old and, doesn't know his middle name. He accidentally said that hospitals should not be bombed. Accidentally said that war crimes should not be committed. This is how he phrased it. He said on Monday, he said that hospitals, quote, must be protected. Now, for you and I and anyone with half a brain, you go, of course hospitals should be protected. What are we? Of course. This is sick people and ill people and children and people giving birth and babies in incubators. And of course hospitals should be protected. What the hell's the matter with you? But then they walked back that statement. The White House had to walk back the idea that hospitals should not be bombed. This is one of the most grotesque stories I think you could ever see. So the read from the article is to CNN. The White House sought to clarify, that means walk back, comments from President Joe Biden on Monday that hospitals must be protected in Gaza. It comes as Israel defended his military action around the Al-Shifa hospital, saying Hamas has a command and control center underneath the largest hospital in the region. By the way, just to throw in here, let's assume, and there's been no proof of this, but let's assume Hamas does have or did have a command center underneath the hospital. You still can't bomb a hospital. It's against international law. It's against all of the law. It's against sanity. It's against humanity. It's against a world that makes any goddamn sense. Even if they did have something underneath the hospital, you would still not be able to justify that. But despite all that, Biden and the White House have walked back his comments that hospitals should be protected. I know I'm repeating myself, but I don't know how else to say it. It's so disgusting. It's so repulsive. It just makes you gag. I'm thinking of just distributing barf bags with this show. You can have them with you when we start every day. To continue from the article, Hamas operating this way, meaning having so-called headquarters underneath hospitals, places civilians in Gaza at greater risk, which is a tough problem for the IDF when legitimate targets are buried inside civilian it's not they're blaming the victims. They're saying to the people in Gaza, this is your fault that we're murdering all of you. And it's not their fault. You're fine if you want to say it's the Hamas fighters' fault for attacking on October 7th. Now, of course, that's ignoring decades of history of everything Israel has done to them, living in an open-air prison being just one of the crimes against them. But still, let's say, okay, it's Hamas fighters' fault. That is not everybody in Gaza's fault. In fact, it is a tiny percentage of the people in Gaza. So if you it's called collective punishment. It's against international law, and it is a genocide. It is horrific. And now here is the White House walking back the idea of hospitals must be protected. Honestly, this is one of the grossest headline statements, moves, propaganda, what have you, that you will see. Just truly horrific. Okay, so, and I don't have more actually in a few moments about those the CNN coverage of that hospital and the idea that there's a Hamas base underneath, etc. By the way, during questioning in the press conferences, they were asked multiple times, do they have any evidence that Hamas was underneath that hospital? And the U.S. government has dodged that question over and over again because apparently they don't have evidence. But anyway, let's move on for a moment to the news about this mutiny that's going on within the U.S. government. And this is really unheard of for the U.S. government to have this many people. Because you got to remember, who is it that works within the U.S. government, within the State Department? These are people that up until recently had drank the Kool-Aid, right? This is not generally you and me. I know some of you right now are just stumbling upon this, and maybe you're learning some things, and maybe you're not really in the true understanding of what the U.S. empire is right now, which is great. I think good for you. You stumbled upon this, and now you're learning something beautiful. That is a wonderful thing. But for most of you who are regular viewers of my 4 times a week live stream, you and I, it's not shocking when we see this and we're horrified. But for people in the government, in the State Department, working in these positions, many of them, they've drank the Kool-Aid. They think what they're doing is positive. Not all of them are in on the secret, in on the entirety of how this system works. In fact, most of them are not. Most of your, I don't know what the number is, but you have thousands upon thousands of people working in the State Department alone. And I don't know what the percentages are either, but I would say the vast majority of them don't even know that much about what the petrodollar is or how the system works or why the U.S. wants to invade and collapse every country that drops the petrodollar. All of this stuff, the larger workings of the proxy war in Ukraine and U.S. hegemony and economic hegemony, all of the machinations of how to own this planet and how the U.S. goes about it, and the inverted totalitarian of corporations owning our governmental systems, all of that is probably not known to your average State Department lower level person, okay? And to them, what is happening right now is, thank you so much for the donation, James. You rock. You're awesome. Right now is quite shocking to them in a different way than it's shocking to me or you. Right now, many of them are kind of being shocked out of their complacency that the U.S. is doing good around the world, that the U.S. and Israel are wonderful democratic nations just trying to do their best. And sure, sometimes we accidentally invade the wrong country, like with Iraq. But in general, we're trying to help. There's a lot of them in our government, in the bureaucracy of our government, that are that kind of person. And right now is a punch to the face. All right. It is. Yes, sure. Some of them are just believing MSNBC propaganda, but a lot of, or Fox News propaganda. Isn't it great when all the cable networks, all the news networks all agree right now? Isn't it wonderful to see that? Fox News is the same crap as MSNBC right now. Outside of the Trump stories. But in terms of Israel and everything, it's same stuff. So isn't that great to see them all come together? Anyway, side note. But so many of them are getting punched in the face right now, and some of them are bold enough to actually react, which never happens. This doesn't happen. Having hundreds of U.S. officials signing protest letters saying they're threatening to resign. So this is a New York Times article. More than 400 U.S. officials signed a letter protesting Biden's Israel policy. Members representing 40 government agencies sent a letter to President Biden on Tuesday protesting his support of Israel. Here's New York Times propaganda just dropped in there, drizzled in there. They're not protesting his support of Israel. They're protesting his support of a genocide is what it is. The letter, part of a growing internal dissent over administration's support of the war. It's not a war, it's a genocide. Calling it a war sounds like it's a fair fight or something. Calls on the president to seek an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and to push Israel to allow humanitarian aid into the territory. It is the latest of several protest letters from officials. There's also been people resigning, but I also want to bring you this on the same note. This Washington Post article, which unfortunately I have to show you photos of because it's behind a paywall, but Blinken was forced to respond, and the title is Blinken confronts State Department dissent over Biden's Gaza policy. When was the last time you heard of the U.S. administration, the White House, having to have like an all hands meeting where they address their own internal government saying, hey guys, stop resigning and shit? The article says, moving to address dissent within the ranks of the State Department over the Biden administration's policy on Israel and the war in Gaza, Secretary of State Antony Blinken told department employees on Monday that we're listening, quote unquote. Doesn't this sound like a KFC HR meeting or some shit? Like, you know, the McDonald's tolerance person comes and tells you, listen, we need diversity training. When it turns out that one of the managers has been sexually harassing everybody, and then the higher up managers to come in and go, look, we're listening to your complaints about Steve and where his hands have been getting to. But the we're listening thing, we're listening, he says, to those who, quote, disagree with approaches we are taking. Don't you love when you can write off genocide as disagreeing with the approaches we're taking? In an all-department message circulated after Blinken returned over the weekend from a trip to the Mideast and Asia, the top U.S. diplomat acknowledged that some diplomats have expressed reservations about the U.S. backing for Israel as it presses an assault on Gaza that has had a heavy civilian toll. Wow, isn't that some euphemisms? They really had several in there. Here's some more quotes from what he said. I also know that some people in the department may disagree with approaches we are taking. Isn't that funny when you disagree with genocide? Approaches we are taking, or have views on what we can do better. What can we do better? We're going to put a complaints box at the front of the State Department, and you just put a little slip of paper in there about about which of the genocides you don't like. You just put a little piece of paper. Let us know if you don't like one of the genocides we're perpetrating. To continue from Blinken, we've organized forums in Washington to hear from you and urged managers and teams to have candid conversations at posts around the world, precisely as we can hear your feedback and ideas. I love that. What ideas do you have? Oh, not to commit genocide? That's an interesting idea. Thanks for throwing that one out there. Thanks for spitballing that one. Really appreciate it. Don't commit genocide. Oh, what a good idea this fella had. He continues, I've asked our senior leadership to keep doing that. We're listening. What you share is informing our policy and our messages. Could you imagine any of that being true? Could you imagine Blinken, Antony Blinken, Mr. War Crimes in Chief, going home at night, getting out a little bundle of complaints from the complaint box with a rubber band around it and going through them and going, oh, I didn't realize, I guess we could be a little more diverse in who we murder. It's true. It's true. It is mainly people of the not white persuasion. That is we need diversity in murdering. I totally agree with that. it's hilarious. It's insanity. It's insanity for an empire, a military empire with the largest military in the world that has murdered 6 million people just in the war on terror alone over the past 20 years. That's from the Brown University Cost of War study. 6 million people. It's hilarious for them to be like, we're listening. And we just give us your ideas on how this could go better, how we could perpetrate this genocide a little more on the up and up. But so this mutiny, and the reason mutiny may be a bit of a strong term is because not that many are resigning. There have been some resignations, but I also saw an interview. He was kept anonymous. He covered his face and had his voice changed, but of someone in the State Department talking about how many of them, including himself, are horrified by the policy, horrified by the fact that the U.S. is not even calling for a ceasefire. I mean, a ceasefire would be the least the U.S. could call for. Horrified by what is going on right now, the bombing of hospitals, the bombing of schools, over 5,000 children murdered by Israel, over 11,000 people. There's so many of them that are horrified, and you're not hearing from them. They're keeping mainly quiet, but I'm sure it exacts a big toll on their, ability to produce, their ability to get the job done as they continue to be the cogs in the wheel of the U.S. empire. They have to go in there every day. And hopefully it's causing a lot of them to continue to wake up, as this mutiny would seem to suggest. So there is a large pro-Israel, to continue from this. By the way, if you feel like you're getting 38 cents, just 38 cents from this episode, I hope you'll become a member at leecamp.net, which is my locals page. For those of you on locals, you are keeping this show going. It's not ad dollars. It's just you guys. That's how it's possible. After I have, lost my TV show from U.S. sanctions, my YouTube page banned around the world, the original YouTube page, and my podcast deleted from Spotify, although it's back, renamed The Lee Camp Show. But all right, let's keep going here. There was a major rally in Washington, D.C., I think today, a pro-Israel rally, pro-genocide rally going on right now in Washington, D.C. And I brought you the other day the hilarious fact that Israel was posting around college campuses that they'd pay you $250 just to go to the rally. So who knows how many of the people there right now or today or yesterday or whenever it was are there because they're being paid. $250 for a college kid, that's a lot of money. So Israel had to pay people to try and make this pro-genocide rally look big. Now, I am Jewish. I'm anti-Zionist, but Jewish. And there are many Jews across America that lightly support Israel. Much of my family. It's like we like Israel. We like a lot of the people we know from Israel. We've been to Israel. Like they believe like that, but they don't support the endless bombing of hospitals. They don't support this genocide. They don't support what Israel's doing to Gaza right now. And so for those people who are kind of in the lighter, like, this is wrong, what's happening right now, they're not going to those rallies. They're not going to go out to a pro-genocide rally. So Israel has been forced to pay a lot of these protesters to show up. But then on top of that, there's been some other interesting developments at this rally. So Democratic Party leaders, Senator Schumer, and Representative Jeffries. Jeffries, by the way, is the leader in the House of the Democrats. And I did a video on him a while back about how heavily he is funded by Israel and by AIPAC, by the Israel lobbies. He is very heavily funded by Israel. So both Republicans and Democrats heavily funded by Israel or by Israeli the lobbying firms. And Hakeem Jeffries has actually said that he said something like, I can't remember which borough he's from in New York, like Brooklyn or something. And he said, we used to call it Little Israel, Little Jerusalem or something like that. He's from Brooklyn. Okay. So Brooklyn, and he was like, I'm proud to say, I'm Israeli or something like that, kidding around. But of course he is owned by those people funding his campaigns. So anyway, they were sharing the stage at the March for Israel rally with far-right extremist pastor John Hagee. John Hagee is so horrifying, the shit he said, that even John McCain, God do not rest his soul, John McCain, Mr. Warhawk, Mr. loves everyone being bombed, even that guy rejected Hagee's endorsement in 2008 for the pastor's comments saying God sent Hitler to help Jews get to Israel. Now, yes, someone says they're going to throw up. You should throw up. But here's what you need to know about that comment about God sent Hitler to help Jews get to Israel. That type of idea, not with the Hitler part, but is not so uncommon amongst Christian Zionists. Evangelical Zionists, which is most evangelicals, believe that all the Jews need to go to Israel in order for the end times to come. At which point, those Jewish people will burn in a fiery hell, will burn in a furnace in hell. So they actually support, quote unquote, Israel and Israel's right to exist and Israel's right to defend itself. They support that stuff so that they can get all of us to burn in a fiery hell for eternity. I mean, if that's not unbelievable. Like, with friends like those, who needs enemies? So Hagee is one of those who loves Israel because it means all the Jews will burn in hell. And anyway, Senator Schumer and Jeffries, Representative Jeffries, were on the stage with him, just cheering on a genocide in Gaza right now. Here's from an article from the past. Back in 2008, McCain told CNN's Brian Todd that he rejected Hagee's endorsement after Todd brought to his attention Hagee's comments that Adolf Hitler had been fulfilling God's will by hastening the desire of Jews to return to Israel in accordance with biblical prophecy. So that's what's on the stage. If you guys were afraid you're missing the show, that's what's on the stage right now at the genocide rally. Hope you, if you, I don't know if it's too late to catch it. I don't know if you can get a live stream or something, because it sounds like a blast. Sounds like just a real feel-good time. Okay, just a couple more. Oh, I want to bring you details of what was found underneath the hospital. I'm sorry to laugh. I don't know. I try to find the ironic or, hilarious moments like the CNN propaganda, because it's the only way I get through this. What Israel's doing right now, it is just truly unbelievable and disgusting and repulsive and makes you gag. And anyway, so CNN has been playing footage of the IDF in the basement, I believe it is, underground in the basement of the hospital that they have forced to collapse. One of the hospitals that they have basically collapsed. And CNN has been very, very proud of this, replaying this footage of, we were with the IDF as they went into the hospital and revealed the Hamas. So anyway, here is Max Blumenthal's analysis of it. And then I'm going to show you some video of what they're showing. But the Israeli army has failed to find tunnels or weapons stockpiled in the Rantisi hospital. Instead, it has turned up a pack of diapers and a calendar listing the days of the week. The presentation has become a laughingstock, except among the cretinous and narrowing base of support for Israel's exterminationist operation. But it has served a larger purpose, helping Israel obscure its real motives for attacking and occupying the three major hospitals in northern Gaza. These hospitals have provided oases for tens of thousands of displaced civilians whose homes were destroyed. Israel is determined to force them south, the people south, pushing them toward Rafah to generate pressure on Egypt to take them in. Eliminating these hospitals also allows Israel to manufacture a humanitarian crisis and ratchet up the pressure on Egypt to accept masses of sick and wounded refugees at hospitals of its own. Israel deploys desperate artifice to paint Ashifa Hospital, Al-Rantisi Hospital, and Quds Hospital as secret military command posts, when in fact it sees them as obstacles to the next Nakba. And so that is, and I feel like that really answers an important question. Many people are wondering, why would Israel attack these hospitals, even if there was so-called Hamas command posts underneath? It still doesn't explain why you would be so repulsive, so morally bankrupt as to bomb a hospital and kill and destroy it and literally kill so many children, so many desperate people. And so here's the answer. It's not just that Israel seems to have no qualms with murdering as many Palestinians as they can, but beyond just that, they're hoping to create a humanitarian crisis, which they have already done. They're hoping that that humanitarian crisis gets so severe that it pushes the people south, and Egypt has no choice but to open their border and allow these refugees to live in tent cities in the desert. So it is part of their plan, part of Israel's plan to actually destroy these hospitals in order to create the second Nakba, which, by the way, I showed it on here the other day. High-level ministers in Israel have called this the second Nakba, the second ethnic cleansing. Okay, so here's the footage that. This one is not from CNN, but this is the same footage that CNN aired.
A woman, clothes, and a rope.
And it's the IDF trying to say that because there's a chair and a piece of clothing and a diaper in a hospital, it means that hostages were kept there. And this is Hamas's command center. By the way, if you just look around what they're showing right now, it's a dingy old chair and basically nothing else. And this is supposedly a command center, right? We've been told that many times. Underneath the hospital is a command center. And we're looking at a dirty, broken chair and a dusty room that has almost nothing in it.
A rope next to the legs.
That was a piece of string. By the way, it was a piece of string that was too short to actually have tied anyone up. So it doesn't prove anything.
Look above this. Look above it. It's a baby bottle. It's a baby bottle in a basement.
So because a baby bottle is in a basement of a hospital with literally a World Health Organization, a World Health Organization box, because there's an old baby bottle there, that proves that this is a Hamas command center. I mean, it is so unbelievable. But I also like to continually point out that even if it were true, let's say they go down into the basement of the hospital and they find all kinds of Hamas stuff, just all guns and posters that say death to Israel and just all kinds, just the stereotypical movie set of a Hamas headquarters, just like the bad guy in True Lies, just his command center underneath. Even if they found that, it wouldn't frickin' matter, okay? It wouldn't matter. It's still a genocide. It's still committing all kinds of atrocities. It's still against international law. It's still against the Geneva Convention. It wouldn't matter. Like, I like to keep pushing that, because who knows if they go under the next hospital and, yeah, they find some Hamas stuff. Or maybe they just create a little movie set of a Hamas headquarters and they show us that. Either way, I like to keep pointing out that it doesn't matter.
We're now looking at an infrastructure.
So, all right, I want to skip to, literally he's holding a curtain and he shows a couch. Like, it really is the most pathetic thing. But anyway, this is one of the key moments that CNN also highlighted, is this calendar that he points to on the wall.
There is a list. This list in Arabic, this list says we are in an operation. The operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a Guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift.
So many people have pointed out that this calendar for those who can actually translate it, for those who speak Arabic, and they do show it well enough that if you spoke Arabic, you could read it. Many people have pointed out that all it is the days of the week. So it's a calendar showing the days of the week, and this proves what? That, like, but again, even if this were where they were holding hostages, we know Hamas has hostages that Israel seems to be trying to kill, but even if this was where they were holding hostages, and even if this calendar with the days of the week had something to do with it, even if that were all true, still can't bomb hospitals, still can't turn off all the water, electricity, and food, still all war crimes, still killed over 11,000 people, still killed 5,000 children. It wouldn't freaking matter, okay? It's pure insanity. It's pure propaganda, and that's what we're being shown. And so I went and I looked at, every once in a while I do this, to look to see what the regulars across America are seeing, what they're taking into their head holes, what it is they're absorbing. And so I went to MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, and I go to their YouTube pages, and I see, because obviously their websites have lots of stuff. Literally the top of the New York Times, yeah, it has one story about Gaza, and then on the other side, this is the front page of the New York Times website, it was a story on Marmite. I'm not kidding. For those who don't know, Marmite is the gnarliest, most disgusting something yeast paste that people in Britain and Australia eat. It's rancid. It is rancid in a jar. And New York Times has an article about that and an article about Gaza, which is filled with propaganda, but that's beside the point. So the websites have a string of different things, but what you can tell by what they're really pushing is the clips they're uploading from their live shows. And so I go to YouTube, CNN's channel, MSNBC, and Fox News, and you look at their video clips, not their live streams, because that's hours long, but their video clips they put up. Fox News is the most, is like Netanyahu just on steroids, okay? Fox News is like, the Hezbollah's in your basement right now. They're in Texas. Hezbollah's in Texas, and they're going to get you. That's Fox News. See, MSNBC is nearly the same, except 90% of what MSNBC is uploading is just Donald Trump indictment stuff, right? Just stuff from the trial, live stream from the trial. Donald Trump's lawyer said A, B, and C. Donald Trump, it's just Donald Trump. And then every once in a while, that 1 out of every 15 videos will be some pro-IDF. We followed the IDF to show how awesome they are or whatever. That is what MSNBC is. It is truly horrific. And then, believe it or not, of the three, CNN seems to be the only one that, like 1 out of 20 videos, will cover things from the Gaza point of view to some degree. We'll have something on there about how the hospitals are collapsing or something of that type. But, you know, it doesn't mean it's like well done, but I'm just saying, of those three, there's essentially nothing from Gaza's point of view, from your average victim of this genocide, from your average person who's lost family members, lost their house, lost their lives, lost their and I mean, you know, had their lives destroyed, fleeing south. There's one video out of 15 on CNN and none on the others. It truly is unbelievable. And somebody reminded me about this article. By the way, I'm about to get to the update on JFK's assassination, which is weird. The past 2 days have been 90% the U.S. and Israel perpetrating a genocide, and then 10%, hey, the U.S. government had JFK killed. But, oh, you know what? I haven't even switched over to Rumble. I'll do that right now. The rest of this is at rumble.com/leecamp. That's rumble.com/leecamp. The rest of this live stream, I do have, believe it or not, more breaking news on the JFK assassination, but also one more story about Israel. That's all at rumble.com/leecamp. Free to watch. Also, if you're on my locals page in that community, you can keep watching there. Nothing will change. Thank you for joining me, those of you who are here. And again, it's free to watch on Rumble. And I've had to build up my Rumble because the other pages are suppressing me, deleting me, destroying my